Greetings, I am Aramanda, and you're listening to me read a fanfiction. Brotherly Bond, Chapter 2. Alright, Pip, I'll hold the deck of the ship steady while you glue on the foremast. Using his teeth, Pipsqueak carefully grabbed the foremast piece of the model ship he and Patch were building together and placed it atop the deck in its appropriate spot. He leaned back in his seat and looked at his work.
I did it, Patch. It looks perfect.
That it does. Patch smiled as he set the ship down on the table. We'll be finished with this thing in no time. Maybe you'll even get a cutie mark for shipbuilding when we're done.
That would be nice.
Pipsqueak nodded as he looked at his brother's cutie mark, a light gold shield.
But I want my cutie mark to be as cool as yours.
Patch chuckled a little. Yeah, I guess it's pretty cool, but I think yours will be a lot more special when it comes. Pipsqueak let out a slightly upset sigh.
All the other ponies in my class already have their cutie marks. I'm the only one without one.
Sounds a lot like me when I was your age. I had to wait a long time before I got mine.
Really?
Pipsqueak looked over at him. You didn't get your cutie mark until you were older? Oh, yeah. He nodded as he started to work on the next part of the ship. I remember I used to go out every day and do a bunch of things to try and find my special talent and get my mark. I'd do as much as I could each day, as fast as I could get them done. He picked up the deck again, inspecting it closely. Bird watching, tightrope walking, break dancing, and so on. Seemed like every other day. I had nothing to show for it except coming home covered in tree sap. Pipsqueak laughed at the thought.
But, you were able to find the thing that got you your cutie mark by doing that, right?
Well, no. After a few years of trying to force myself to find my mark, I just stopped. I guess I realized that a cutie mark is more special when it isn't rushed, and it's allowed to show up when it was time. Then one day, I was in town and saw the Royal Guards marching in a parade. They seemed so cool and looked really brave. I pictured myself marching along with them, in full armor. That's when this thing finally showed up. He looked at his cutie mark with a smile. That's how I knew I wanted to join the Royal Guard one day. And it felt so great knowing that I found what would be my special gift. Patch looked over at his brother, who was glancing down at his blank flank with a sad look in his eyes. Don't get me wrong, Pip, Patch quickly added. I want you to go out and try and find your cutie mark, but make sure you have fun doing it. Oh, and do be safe while you do it. I don't think Mum wants to pick up another one of her boys from the hospital.
Huh? Hospital?
Let's just say I'm really glad I don't have a cutie mark for makeshift catapult testing. Patch laughed as he rubbed Pipsqueak's mane. Pipsqueak snapped back into reality when he accidentally bumped into Scootaloo and knocked himself down.
Gah!
Ow! Scootaloo turned and glared at him.
Watch where you're going, Pipsqueak. That hurt.
Sorry, Pip said, smiling sheepishly. I guess I spaced out.
You do that way too much, you know. If you want to get your cutie mark, you need to focus.
She snapped as she started to walk off to join Applebloom and Sweetabelle a few feet away. Pipsqueak pulled himself up and nervously walked after her.
I'm just saying, Sweetabelle,
Applebloom drawled out, pointing at Sweetabelle's head.
Seems really funny to be wearing that on a camping trip. Rarity said I have to wear this to keep the bugs from biting my face.
Sweetabelle was sporting a light pink gardening hat, complete with a mesh mosquito netting surrounding her face.
But I packed some bug spray that works just as good. You don't need that silly thing. I guess that would be better,
Sweetabelle said as she used her hoofs to throw off the hat.
It's really hot and stuffy in there anyway.
She let out a grin when she saw Pipsqueak and Scootaloo arrive.
Scootaloo, Pipsqueak, you both made it. We ready, Crusaders?
Scootaloo said proudly as she slammed a hoof to her chest.
Tonight's the night we're gonna get our cutie marks.
Yeah! Applebloom jumped up.
We're gonna find our talents and show the world just how awesome we are.
Sweetabelle seemed stumped for a moment, but quickly recovered.
Ditto! Cutie mark Crusader camping trip! Yay!
Pipsqueak removed his hooves from his ears. They could at least warn a fellow before they shout like that.
Right.
He half-heartedly cheered.
"I'm really glad you can make it, Pipsqueak,"
Applebloom said as she walked over to him.
"Yeah, my mom and dad said it was okay, long as I'm home by noon tomorrow,"
he said, looking away from her shyly. He was still getting used to the idea of going on a camping trip with these strange ponies. He started to nervously fidget with his saddlebag.
"My big sis told me the same thing,"
Applebloom said with a sigh.
"Says that a camping trip is no excuse for shucking up the chores. She treats me like I'm still a little filly sometimes." "Yeah," Sweetie Belle nodded. "My big sister told me I couldn't play in the mud, dirt, bushes, trees, or anything that'll get my coat dirty. She kept saying,"
Sweetie Belle put on her best Rarity impression,
"it's improper for a lady to engage in such barbaric activities when she doesn't have to."
Applebloom laughed.
"That was pretty good, Sweetie Belle. I've been practicing."
Now Pipsqueak was nervous. There they were, talking about their siblings. Would he have to do so next? He was worried that the very moment he mentioned Patch, they would try to delve deeper into the subject. Then the bad memory and the pain would come back, followed by tears. Luckily for him, before the two fillies had a chance to speak up, the third, most impatient filly called out to them.
"Let's go. We gotta hike out for a good spot while there's still light out." "Oh, right,"
Sweetie Belle said as she raced up to Scootaloo.
"Let's get going, Pipsqueak."
Applebloom flashed a smile at him and ran after her two friends. Pipsqueak attempted to chase after them, but the saddlebag he carried was a bit heavy.
"Wah!"
He tripped and landed face first in the dirt.
"Ah!"
Scootaloo let out a groan as she face-toofed.
"So not cool."
The hike to search for the perfect camping site had been mostly uneventful for Pipsqueak. All four ponies, each carrying their own fully packed saddlebag, cantered along a lone trail leading deeper into the woods. While the three fillies were ahead of him, he was trailing behind, and looking at the scenery of trees and leaves that surrounded the path. He could hear Scootaloo chatting up a storm about something incredible she saw a certain rainbow-maned mare do a few days ago. Something about an atomic rainboom, or whatever she called it. He didn't really care. Right now his mind was more focused on the trail they were walking on. In his mind, the forest of Whitetail Wood was now a smaller forest, just outside of Trottingham. The three fillies in front of him were nowhere to be seen, and walking alongside him was Patch.
"Just a bit further, Pip,"
Patch said with a grin. He was carrying the bulk of the camping supplies, while his younger brother just had a smaller saddlebag filled with snacks.
"I think I found us an even better spot to camp at from now on." "We're going pretty far this time, Patch,"
Pipsqueak said, looking around at the unfamiliar landscape.
"Are you sure we won't get lost?"
Patch let out a chuckle.
"Navigational training at boot camp. We'll be fine, baby bro."
He looked ahead, seeing their destination just a few yards away.
"There it is."
Pipsqueak looked over, and his eyes lit up with excitement.
"Wow!"
The site Patch had chosen was a rather large clearing in the forest, but the thing that caught Pipsqueak's attention was the mid-sized lake that was nested calmly in the middle of the site. He raced ahead as fast as he could.
"Careful, Pip."
Patch followed him.
"Don't trip."
Pipsqueak stopped before the lake, looking at his reflection in the water. The lake was crystal clear. He could easily see the fish swimming beneath the surface. He decided to make a funny face at his reflection, laughing at the image.
"I didn't know there was a lake here this whole time."
Patch set down the gear and dug into a large saddlebag.
"I didn't either, but I was thrilled when I found it. Means we get to test these things out."
He pulled out his head of the bag and was carefully holding with his teeth 2 pirate ship toys.
"Cool!"
Pipsqueak ran over to him.
"Can we try them out right now?"
Patch walked over and set the 2 ships along the shallow edge of the lake.
"The breeze is just right. One good nudge and these things are sure to make it all the way to the other side of the lake."
Pipsqueak ran over to the edge and pressed his nose against the rear of one of the ships, careful not to send it sailing too soon. Patch followed suit and took control of the other ship. The 2 brothers looked at each other with big smiles.
"What do you say, Pip?"
Patch asked.
"Last one to the other side collects the firewood?" "You're on, Patch,"
Pipsqueak declared with determination.
1, 2, 3, go!
Both brothers nudged their ships and sent them coasting over the water, the gentle wind catching the sails and pushing both ships farther and faster. Pipsqueak started to jump up and down with excitement as his ship passed Patches. The older brother smiled warmly, happy to see the colt having such a wonderful time.
Pipsqueak, hello? Any pony home? What?
Pipsqueak snapped out of his daydream and looked around. He was back on the Whitetail Wood Trail, and a pair of large amber eyes were staring at him.
Oh, I did it again.
He frowned.
Sorry. No need to apologize,
Applebloom said with a comforting grin.
I saw you were starting to fall back, so I figured I'd walk along with ya. Frankly, I think I heard enough about Rainbow Dash for one day. Your loss,
Skooloo shouted at her.
Right, Sweetiebelle? Right,
Sweetiebelle fibbed. Now she was trapped in dealing with Skooloo's fangirl ramblings. Despite having a pony his own age to talk to, Pipsqueak remained silent. Conversations with fillies weren't something he had much experience with. Back in Trottingham he went to an all-colt school, and he could almost easily have a good chat with the few friends he had at the time. This would be his first real one-on-one conversation with a filly, and he was at a complete loss for words. Applebloom seemed to sense this, and decided that she would bring up the first topic. It would take her a moment to come up with a good subject to start with.
So, Nightmare Night is coming up soon. What are you gonna be this year, Pipsqueak? Nightmare Night?
He looked at her, slightly confused.
Well, of course. You know about Nightmare Night, right? I never really celebrated it before. My mum and dad didn't want me going out after dark back in Trottingham.
Applebloom was a bit stunned. She thought that every pony celebrated Nightmare Night when it rolled around. That's when she came up with an idea.
If you never celebrated it before, then you need to this year. You can go Nightmare Nighting with us.
What's Nightmare Nighting? He asked her.
It's when we go door to door all over Ponyville in our customs and get candy.
Her excitement started to grow just talking about it.
Then we'll head over to the Nightmare Night Festival and play games like apple bobbing, spider throwing, and pumpkin catapulting.
Even though these games were all new to him, Pipsqueak did think they sounded fun, even if the spider throwing game made him a bit hesitant. The whole going door to door getting candy thing had him excited the most. Who doesn't like free candy?
And there's gonna be dancing and costume contests,
Sweetiebelle chimed in.
Not to mention some awesome pranks.
Skooloo grinned.
Nightmare Night is the best night of the year for pranks. If my mum and dad are okay with it, then maybe I'll go,
he said, with a small smile.
Maybe my sis can make you a costume,
Sweetiebelle suggested.
She made mine last week. I'm gonna be a vampire. I got some monster makeup,
Applebloom said.
I'm gonna be that Monster Bright character. I'm gonna paint myself blue and,
Skooloo suddenly stopped.
No, my parents told me I couldn't do that. I don't know what I'm gonna be this year. Well, it's a shame that Pinkie Pie's going as a chicken this year,
Applebloom started to tease.
That would have been perfect for ya. Ooh, ooh,
Sweetiebelle immediately joined in.
Maybe she can be her chick. I'm not going as a chicken,
Skooloo growled out. Pipsqueak remembered his days in Trottingham. His parents placed him under a strict curfew, and rarely was he allowed out of the house after the sun went down. Not to mention that the ponies of Trottingham never did hold a festival for Nightmare Night, so he and his family had no real reason to celebrate it. He did wonder for a moment if Patch ever knew about it, but after what he'd heard from the Crusaders, he admitted that he was starting to look forward to it. Perhaps even excited. Plus, ever since moving to Ponyville, his parents had loosened up on his curfew. They had once explained to him that since Ponyville was so much smaller than Trottingham, it would be much safer.
Maybe I could go as that dragon that was holed up in the mountain,
Skooloo proposed.
Or how about one of the parasprites that devoured half the town?
Sweetiebelle said to her.
Why not a Smarty Pants doll? That would be pretty scary,
Applebloom added.
Scary for me? The entire town would be fighting themselves just to get near me.
Maybe his parents were mistaken. That was Chapter 2 of Brotherly Bond by Crash Jet. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed it. What do you think of my reading? Leave your feedback and ideas in the comment section below. Hope to see you again when I'm finished with Chapter 3.